Our first speaker this evening. Jim has been a Toastmaster since 1997. Along the way, he has discovered the fact that embracing Toastmasters helps individuals become powerful presenters and purposeful leaders. Captain Charlie Plumb, an F-4 Phantom pilot, used his 2,103 days as a prisoner of war in Vietnam to reach unimagined heights after he was freed from the Hanoi Hilton. Bringing us making a difference tonight is Jim Sims. Jim Sims, making a difference.
By a show of hands, how many of you consider yourselves to be powerful? We should have 100% of the hands raised, some kind of reluctantly, because we're Toastmasters. We're members of the Youngest and Funnest Club in all of District 48, and we've survived 2 years of COVID-19 pandemic, and we're still going strong while other clubs have faded to the side, and we're still there, the Carolwood Toastmasters Club. And I'm wondering, why do we sometimes not recognize the power within us? And so I'd like to share with you a Hindu legend. And the Hindu legend is that at one time, all men were considered like gods. But man misused the Godhead, so the great God Brahma decided to take that Godhead away from man, where he would never be able to find it again. So got together with a group of lesser gods to come up with a plan. The first god suggested, let's bury it. Let's bury it in the deepest part of the earth. And the god of wisdom, the god Brahma, thought about that and said, no, someday man will be digging, looking for gold and silver, precious metals, and might just stumble upon it. A second god suggested, let's put it in the deepest part of the ocean. Sounded like a good plan at first, but then the god Brahma thought about that and said, no, there'll be Jacques Cousteau, there'll be people searching in the ocean, the deepest parts of the ocean. Running out of suggestions, a third god said, let's put it on the highest mountaintop. And the god Brahma realized that men were going to be climbing all kinds of mountains and they might find it. So finally, the god Ganesha whispered into Brahma's ear. A knowing look came across his face, and he said, yes, that's where we'll put it. We'll put it inside of man himself, because he'll never think to look there. And ever since, men have been digging, climbing, and searching for that power that lies within. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That was the distance in Captain Charlie Plumb's jail cell, where he spent most of the 2,103 days as a prisoner of war. He was a Top Gun. He was a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy, had a degree in engineering, and 5 days before he was to leave Vietnam and go home, he had had 74 successful missions. His 75th mission over Hanoi, he and his co-pilot were shot down, and he parachuted out, but yet he was injured. He had 4 major injuries. He was imprisoned. He was tortured. He even said, unlike maybe some of the other pilots, he even cried. And so it was a period of time where Captain Charlie Plumb was trying to make sense out of the senseless, and he was using perseverance, and he was trying to be successful in that regard. And in November 20th of 1970, at the Son Tay prison, Special Forces and the U.S. Air Force sent a contingent of men to rescue at the Son Tay prison. And they shot 200 North Vietnam guards within minutes. They escaped on helicopters and flew out of that prison. But unfortunately, 4 months before, what had happened is the men had been taken away from that prison and brought back to the Hanoi Hilton. Some of you who are much younger might say Hanoi Hilton sounds like a hotel. That was the derogatory words that the prisoners, that the pilots used to describe that incarceration, that time that they were prisoners of war. But what happened, because of that raid, the North Vietnamese started to treat the prisoners a little bit better, a little bit more humanely. And what happened is they even formed a Toastmasters club. Howard Rutledge, Commander Howard Rutledge, and Commander Harry Jenkins, they had only known each other for 4 years from the tapping between their cells. But then all of a sudden, they were able to start playing card games. They were able to play exercise. They were able to exercise. And one had been a Toastmaster back in the States. And so they started a club. And Shirley, you like this. They even had an R counter at the Toastmasters Club at the Hanoi Hilton. So they organized that club, and Charlie became a member of the club. And he had a lot of awards. He has 2 Purple Hearts, the Legion of Merit, the Silver Medal, the Bronze Medal, and the POW Medal. And when he became a motivational speaker, still speaking now at the age of 80, he has spoken to over 5,000 audiences. He was at a restaurant in Kansas City one day, and he looked at the table. There was somebody staring at him about 2 tables away. All of a sudden, this gentleman got up, walked over, pointed to him. He said, "You're Captain Charlie Plumb. You flew off the Kitty Hawk. You were a Top Gun. You were shot down over North Vietnam, and you spent 6 years in prison from the age of 24 to the age of 30. And dumbfounded, Charlie Plumb said, "How do you know all that?" And the man said, "Because I packed your parachute." So the lesson that Charlie Plumb said is, who is packing your parachute? Who have you packed a parachute for that looks for you for strength? Who is the person that you reach out to when you need to be uplifted? And we all need to be conscious and aware of packing parachutes. And that's part of his motivational deliveries and part of his motivational speeches. And if you follow Charlie Plumb's story, you can become touching, inspiring, and memorable. And your next speech can resonate and connect. You can help people pack their parachute. At the end of the Vietnam War, 10,000 Vietnamese prisoners were exchanged for 591 US POWs. An amazing class. Of those 591 POWs, 17 became generals, 7 became admirals, 2 became United States senators, including John McCain, and also most of the pilots stayed with the military and became senior executives. In his book, in the book Lessons from the Hanoi Hilton, very interesting point is it showed that a study was done of people who were combatants in Vietnam. 30.6% had PTSD. Of the prisoners of war in Hanoi, only 4% had PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And they actually now call it PTG, post-traumatic growth. So I leave you with, who's packing your parachute? What challenges do you have that are in front of you? And can you use Toastmasters to reach people and uplift them, as Charlie Plumb has done to over 5,000 audiences? Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much. I'd like to persevere with all of you as we evaluate Jim Sims in his talk. The title of his talk is Making a Difference. Now, this is an important theme for his discussion. We know that we are taught that in crafting a speech, we should have a powerful opening, a powerful close, that all of this is wrapped around the message you want to deliver. Have a clear central message. And here's where I have my first recommendation for Jim. You're a great storyteller and you brought in many different stories. The question is the flow. You started off by talking about the different gods and how they would react and where they would put in the special thing so that man could not find it, and they put it in himself. And then you went off to Vietnam and you talked about Charlie and the individuals in the Hanoi Hilton, and how in the end, after they were released through a prisoner exchange, you had what their achievements were and how they had achieved those things that we should all be proud about for those individuals. But one part did not really make it to the other. It didn't smooth, it wasn't a smooth flow of one thing versus another. I think once you passed the God thing and the individuals that represented that, and you started to talk about the Hanoi Hilton and the individuals that made it through and how that influenced their lives to creating a life that made a difference through the parachute packing individual and how it made a difference on someone else. It's sort of like a variation of the story that we tell about the beach and the person on the beach finding the different starfishes and throwing the starfishes back into the ocean. And the retort is, well, why did you do that? And you say, well, it made a difference in that starfish. And the answer to that is, well, you can't make a difference for all these starfish all over the place. And the response to that is, it made a difference for that starfish. So you had an important central message, but it was couched in probably 3 different stories that were going on at the same time. You used statistics, you used your time to focus in on what happened with the graduates of the Hanoi Hilton, and all of those were important. I think the most important thing we can learn in Toastmasters is how to be a surgeon and surgically look at our speeches and cut out parts of it so that what's left is an impactful, powerful speech that holds together very well. Thank you for delivering that. I look forward to additional speeches.